How does a kid who grew up dirt poor in one of America's most dangerous neighborhoods, watched his father get sentenced to 55 years, and came from an area where only 1% ever make it out, end up making $100 million while stuck on house arrest? I'm talking about owning actual tigers, real-life tanks, a $5.5 million mansion, and over $1 million worth of cars he can't even drive. He's got $6 million in jewelry, all while being legally trapped inside his own house. He couldn't leave, couldn't tour, and couldn't perform. Yet he still outturned most rappers who were completely free. And now that he's finally off house arrest, he's projected to pull in $60 million from his current tour alone. $60 million? Man, that is just insane. That's NBA YoungBoy. His story isn't just a standard rags to riches tale, it's about pure survival. This is a level of hustling that most people can't even wrap their heads around. Today, we're breaking down exactly how YoungBoy went from sleeping on couches and getting jumped in group homes to becoming one of the wealthiest young rappers alive. Trust me, the way he generated that kind of wealth while locked up was nothing short of genius. No cap. If you've been following the channel, you know I keep it 100 no fluff, just straight facts. So, let's get into how this youngin truly turned a life of poverty into a multi-million-dollar empire that even prison bars couldn't stop. To understand how YoungBoy pulled this off, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. October 20th, 1999. Born Kentrell Deshaun Gowden. And look, when I say he came from a struggle, I mean a real struggle. This wasn't just being broke. This was dirt poor, not knowing where your next meal is coming from type of poverty. At just 4 years old, he broke his neck in a wrestling accident and had to wear a halo brace until his spine healed. You see those scars on his forehead today? Those are from that brace. That was his very first battle scar, and he wasn't even old enough for kindergarten yet. It's crazy to even think about, but that physical pain was nothing compared to what happened next. His father, Jeffrey Gowden, was sentenced to 55 years in prison for robbery. 55 years. Man, that's essentially a life sentence. YoungBoy grew up never knowing what it was like to have a father figure, with no male guidance and no dad to show him the ropes. Just nothing. His mom, Shirhunda Gowden, eventually moved out of the neighborhood, leaving YoungBoy with his grandmother, Alice Gowden. Real talk, his grandmother became everything to him. She was his mother, his father, and his protector all in one. She raised him in North Baton Rouge, which is easily one of the most dangerous areas in Louisiana. No cap. They were dirt poor, genuinely struggling through the kind of poverty where you aren't even sure if there's going to be food on the table tomorrow. But his grandmother held it down the best she could, giving him all the love and stability she could offer in such an unstable world. Then, tragedy struck again. When YoungBoy was only 10 years old, Alice passed away from heart failure. The one person who was his rock, who loved him unconditionally and kept him safe, was suddenly gone. At 10 years old, he was sent to a group home, and that's where things got dark. YoungBoy has talked about getting beaten up inside the group home for no reason at all. The other boys would put their hands on him, and he'd just look up wondering why they were even hitting him. Imagine that you've just lost the only person who truly loved you, and now you're getting jumped by other kids for no reason. That's the kind of trauma that shapes a person, hardens you, and turns you into who you eventually become. On that timing, YoungBoy dropped out of Scotlandville Magnet High School in the 9th grade. By age 14, he was arrested for robbery and sent to a juvenile detention center in Tallulah, Louisiana, for 6 months. Most kids would have given up right then, accepting that prison, poverty, or death was their only destiny. But YoungBoy did something different. He started writing inside that cold juvenile cell. He wrote song after song, pouring all his pain, his trauma, and his survival instincts into his lyrics. That is where Life Before Fame was born. His first mixtape, created in the darkness of confinement. That was the moment he realized music was his only way out. It wasn't just a dream, it was survival. It was either make it in the industry, or end up dead, or locked away forever like everyone else from his Mabel Mills. Once he was released from detention, he moved in with his close friend NBA 33 and 33's mother, Monique, who essentially became a second mother to him, but they still had to survive. And in Baton Rouge, survival meant doing whatever was necessary. YoungBoy and 33 got involved in criminal activities just to fund their studio time. They were robbing and hustling, doing whatever they had to do just to get their music recorded. But here's what's crazy. YoungBoy knew music was his only ticket out. This wasn't a hobby for him, it was life or death. In 2015, at just 15 years old, he dropped his first official mixtape, Life Before Fame, on YouTube. He followed that up with Mind of a Menace, then parts 2 and 3. He was flooding YouTube with raw, authentic pain, and kids from the streets connected with it immediately because it was real. He wasn't just making up stories. He was documenting his actual life. By 2016, his mixtape 38 Baby exploded on YouTube, racking up millions of views. First, the streets of Baton Rouge knew him, then all of Louisiana, and soon the entire South. This 16-year-old kid, who had been sleeping on couches and eating whenever he could, was suddenly getting millions of plays. But that was just the beginning. In 2017, everything changed. Mike Caron from Atlantic Records scouted him, and YoungBoy signed a 5-album deal worth $2 million with artist partner group and Atlantic Records. For a kid who had been dirt poor his entire life, $2 million was generational wealth. It was the ultimate way out. The first thing YoungBoy did was give away $20,000 in cash in his old neighborhood. He went right back to the same streets that raised him and started passing out stacks to people who needed it. That's just who he is. No cap. He never forgot where he came from, and real recognized real. Just a week after getting out of jail for another case in 2017, he dropped Untouchable, and the song went viral instantly. Then, Outside Today dropped in 2018. It went quadruple platinum and hit the Billboard Hot 100. His debut album, Until Death Call My Name, peaked at number 7 on the Billboard 200. YoungBoy was finally getting rich, and he was doing exactly what he said he would. He moved everyone out of the hood. His mom, his siblings, his homies, everyone who held him down when he had nothing. He bought houses, paid off bills, and got his people out of dangerous situations. NBA stood for Never Broke Again, and he made sure nobody around him would be broke again either. But here's where things got intense. With all that success came heavy pressure from the law. In November 2016, YoungBoy was arrested by U.S. Marshals in Austin, Texas, right before a performance. He was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder after allegedly opening fire on a street in South Baton Rouge. This was serious business. At only 17 years old, he was eligible to be tried as an adult in Louisiana. Facing the real possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars, he sat in parish prison for 6 months, awaiting trial. 6 months of his prime years locked in a cell, watching his career momentum potentially fade away. But this is where money changed everything. YoungBoy hired top-tier lawyers, the kind of legal team only serious money can buy. In late August 2017, he appeared before Judge Bonnie Jackson, and his lawyers worked their magic. He pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of aggravated assault with a firearm and was released on $50,000 bail. While awaiting sentencing, he ended up with a 10-year suspended sentence, which basically meant as long as he stayed out of trouble, he'd remain free. Let me break it down for you. That is the power of money. A poor kid with a public defender is likely doing life, but a kid with millions and elite lawyers walks. That's the reality of the American justice system. No cap. Throughout the next few years, he continued catching cases. In February 2018, he was arrested before a concert in Tallahassee, and throughout 2019, he faced more legal issues, probation violations, and arrests. But every single time, he had the resources to fight back. Money became his shield against a system that often swallows up young men coming from poverty. In September 2020, YoungBoy was arrested in Baton Rouge for illegal drug manufacturing and possession of stolen weapons. Then, in 2021, he was arrested again after a high-speed car chase while trying to evade the police. He was facing serious federal gun charges that could have put him away for decades. However, in July 2022, he was found not guilty of those firearms charges from the previous September. His lawyers, funded by his millions, secured an acquittal. He was then released to house arrest in Utah, confined to his mansion while awaiting trial on separate federal charges from Louisiana. Here is what people need to understand. YoungBoy would still be behind bars if he were broke. The only reason he's been able to fight these cases, get bail, and beat charges is that he has the money for the absolute best legal representation available. Real talk? That's just the way it is. Now, this is where people started connecting the dots and realizing what YoungBoy was actually up to. In October 2021, he moved to Utah with his girl Jaslyn Michelle Hayes to begin his house arrest. Most people assumed this would be the end of his career. How do you stay relevant when you're trapped in a house? How do you make money when you can't tour, can't perform, and can't even step off your own property? YoungBoy basically said, "Watch me." According to celebrity manager Wack 100 and DJ NBA YoungBoy pulled in between $50 million and $100 million in a single year while on house arrest. Let me repeat that for the people in the back. $100 million while locked in his house. That is some next level boss moves right there. No cap. How did he do it? Let me break it down for you. First, he sold a portion of his music catalog that he owned from Atlantic Records. Then, he signed a massive deal with Capitol Records, reportedly worth between $40 million and $60 million. But honestly, that's not even the craziest part. The real kicker is his work ethic. In 2023 alone, while still on house arrest, YoungBoy released 121 songs. 121 songs. Man, that's more than Drake and Kendrick Lamar combined. He was dropping music faster than people could even keep up with. His YouTube channel alone was generating about 38% of his income through ad revenue that's over $4 million a year just from YouTube ads. His streaming numbers were through the roof, surpassing 15 billion total views across all platforms. Every stream, every play, and every view was putting money directly into his pocket. While other rappers were out on the road touring and doing shows, YoungBoy was at home pumping out hit after hit. He also re-signed with Atlantic Records for a reported $60 million deal before later moving to Motown after a massive bidding war. Labels were throwing money at him because they knew that despite being on house arrest, he could deliver, and he did. People in the industry couldn't believe it. How is someone making $100 million when they can't even leave their front door? But that is the power of the digital age. YoungBoy didn't need to tour. He had a direct connection to millions of fans through YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and social media. That's a genius move right there. He flipped a situation that was supposed to destroy his career and turned it into the most profitable year of his life. Now, that is the true definition of never broke again. So, what does someone do when they're making millions while trapped in a mansion? They buy absolutely insane things. And when I tell you the stuff YoungBoy bought was wild, I mean it was nuts. Let's start with the tigers. Yeah, tigers. In October 2017, YoungBoy posted a video on Instagram showing him sitting on his living room couch with a white tiger cub right next to him. A white tiger cub is incredibly rare, a genetic mutation that only occurs in 1 out of every 10,000 Bengal tiger births. But YoungBoy didn't just have one. He had at least 2, a white one and an orange one. That's some Mike Tyson level stuff right there. No cap. Rick Ross even revealed that the tiger eventually ended up at his mansion for a while through Meek Mill. Unfortunately, the white tiger was later seized by Louisiana authorities due to neglect and had to be rescued, which is sad but true. Then you've got the horses. YoungBoy actually learned how to ride in Eden, Utah, during his house arrest. For someone who came up on the streets of Baton Rouge, owning and riding horses represented a completely different lifestyle, something country, free, and peaceful. But the craziest purchase? A tank. Yes, a literal military tank was parked at his multi-million-dollar mansion. While most rappers are out buying exotic cars, YoungBoy bought an actual tank. That is some serious gangster energy right there. Speaking of cars, YoungBoy's collection was valued at over $1.3 million. He owned a McLaren GT, a Rolls-Royce Cullinan with a white exterior and blood-red interior, a Mercedes-Maybach S580, Dodge Hellcats, a Bentley Continental G, a Tesla Model S, a Corvette Z06, and a Suburban. Most of his cars were white. That became his signature look. But here's the twist that's actually pretty sad. In a Billboard interview, YoungBoy mentioned he wanted to get rid of all of them because he couldn't even drive them while stuck on house arrest. That's the tragedy of his wealth. Man, he has millions of dollars worth of cars just sitting in garages that he isn't even allowed to drive. All that money and all that luxury, yet he was still confined. That is some heavy reality right there. His Utah mansion was over 8,800 square feet on 1.46 acres, featuring 5 car garages, a heated driveway, an elevator, a pool, and panoramic views. He nicknamed it Gravedigger Mountain and even released an entire project named after the place. In February 2024, he listed that mansion for $5.5 million after spending more than 2 years trapped inside. He had made hundreds of millions while confined, but he was finally ready to move on. But yo, this is where the story gets even crazier. After all that time on house arrest and making $100 million while locked down, YoungBoy finally got his freedom back. And what is he doing now? He's on tour. And not just any tour. He's projected to pull in around $60 million from his current run alone. $60 million. Let that sink in for a second. He made $100 million when he couldn't tour. And now that he can, he's adding another $60 million just from performing. That's $160 million in a very short window of time. At just 25 years old, that is absolutely insane. No cap. The demand for YoungBoy's shows is through the roof because his fans have been waiting years to see him live. While he was stuck on house arrest, his fan base only got bigger. His YouTube numbers just kept climbing, and his streaming stats continued to break records. So, when he finally announced those tour dates, tickets sold out instantly. The venues are packed, arenas filled with thousands of people who connected with his music during the darkest times of their lives. These are people who relate to his pain, his struggle, and his story. And now they finally get to see him in person after years of him being locked down. That $60 million tour projection really shows you the power of YoungBoy's fan base. These aren't just casual listeners. These are die-hard fans who will pay whatever it takes to see him perform. And YoungBoy is giving them exactly what they've been waiting for. So let's do the math real quick. $100 million from his house, arrest hustle plus $60 million from touring. That's $160 million. Gangal from a kid who grew up with nothing, who was sleeping on couches, getting jumped in group homes, and who lost his grandmother at just 10 years old. That is the true definition of never broke again. For real. The bigger picture here is that all this wealth, all this success, and all these sold-out tours couldn't buy YoungBoy the one thing that actually matters most: peace of mind. In that Billboard interview, he revealed something incredibly deep. He said, "I'm terrified of people. I'm very scared of people. On my kids, I'm terrified of people, and I'm very shy." Think about that for a second. A man making $160 million and selling out arenas to millions of fans is actually terrified of people. He explained that people are cruel and unpredictable, noting that you never know what someone might do to you. That is the pure paranoia that comes from growing up the way he did, from losing people, dealing with constant violence, and always having to look over his shoulder. Money can't fix that kind of trauma, man. All the tours and mansions in the world can't heal those wounds. YoungBoy has at least 11 children with different women. Having become a father for the first time at just 16, his kids include Casey, Kamiri, Talon, Armani, Cody, Alice named after his late grandmother Kentrell Jr., and Clemenza. He's clearly trying to give them everything he never had, but the trauma he carries still dictates how he moves as a father. No cap. Despite all his legal troubles, YoungBoy never stopped giving back. Even while he was incarcerated in 2019, he and his team funded an annual back-to-school drive to provide children with school supplies and other necessities. That's that real, recognized real energy right there. So, let me bring this all home for you. If you had told that 10-year-old kid, the one who had just lost his grandmother, who was getting beaten up in a group home, and who had absolutely nothing and nobody, that, by age 25, he'd have made over $160 million between house arrest earnings and touring, that he'd own tigers, tanks, and mansions, and be one of the biggest rappers on the planet, Lil Bro probably wouldn't have even believed it was possible. But for NBA YoungBoy, the impossible became inevitable. His story isn't just a standard rags to riches tale. It's a story of pure survival. It's about a kid who was dealt the worst hand imaginable, and still found a way to win. He went from being dirt poor to making $100 million while stuck on house arrest. Then turned around and cleared another $60 million from touring the moment he got free. That's $160 million, gang. From a kid who didn't know where his next meal was coming from, he went from sleeping on couches to owning $5.5 million mansions. He went from wearing head braces to wearing million-dollar chains, and from juvenile detention to making more money than most people will see in 10 lifetimes. That is the story of YoungBoy Never Broke Egghead. He put a major emphasis on that never broke again part. But his story also shows the limits of wealth. Money got him out of poverty, and it bought him incredible things, but it couldn't buy him freedom from his trauma. It couldn't erase the pain or give him true peace of mind. For real, the kid from Baton Rouge who started with nothing built an empire that even house arrest couldn't stop. Now that he's free and touring, he's proving that the hustle never ends. The marathon continues, and that he'll truly never be broke again. No cap. What do y'all think about YoungBoy's story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did he make the smartest moves possible, or what?